When God Was a Woman by Merlin Stone, Chapter 2. Who was she? It was not long before the various pieces of evidence fell into place, and the connections began to take form. And then I understood. Ashtoreth, the despised pagan deity of the Old Testament, was, despite the efforts of biblical scribes, to disguise her identity by repeatedly using the masculine gender, actually Astarte, the great goddess, as she was known in Canaan, the Near Eastern queen of heaven. Those heathen idol worshippers of the Bible had been praying to a woman god, elsewhere known as Enin, Inanna, Nana, Nut, Anat, Anahita, Istar, Isis, Osset, Asherah, Ashtart, Adaret, Attar, and Hathor, the many-named divine ancestress. Yet each name denoted, in the various languages and dialects of those who revered her, the great goddess. Was it merely coincidence that during all those years of Sunday school, I never learned that Ashtoreth was female? Even more astonishing was the archaeological evidence which proved that her religion had existed and flourished in the Near and Middle East for thousands of years before the arrival of patriarchal Abraham, first prophet of the male deity Yahweh. Archaeologists have traced the worship of the goddess back to Neolithic communities of about 7,000 BC, some to the Upper Paleolithic set cultures of about 25,000 BC. From the time of its Neolithic origins, its existence was repeatedly attested to until well into Roman times. Yet Bible scholars agree that it was as late as somewhere between 1800 and 1550 BC that Abraham had lived in Canaan, Palestine. Who was this goddess? Why had a female rather than a male been designated as the supreme deity? How influential and significant was her worship, and when had it actually begun? As I ask myself these questions, I begin to probe even deeper into Neolithic and Paleolithic times. Though goddesses have been worshipped in all areas of the world, I focused on the religion as it evolved in the Near and Middle East, since these were the lands where both Judaism, Christianity, and Islam were born. I found that the development of the religion of the female deity in this area was intertwined with the earliest beginnings of religion so far discovered anywhere on earth. Dawn in the Gravatian Garden of Eden. The Upper Paleolithic period, though most of its sites have been found in Europe, is the conjectural foundation of the religion of the goddess as it emerged in the later Neolithic age of the Near East. Since it precedes the time of written records and does not directly lead into an historical period that might have helped to explain it, the information on the Paleolithic existence of goddess worship must at this time remain speculative. Theories on the origins of the goddess in this period are founded on the juxtaposition of mother kinship customs to ancestor worship. They are based upon three separate lines of evidence. The first relies on anthropological analogy to explain the initial development of matrilineal mother kinship societies. Studies of primitive tribes over the last few centuries have led to the realization that some isolated primitive peoples, even in our own century, did not yet possess the conscious understanding of the relationship of sex to conception. The analogy is then drawn that Paleolithic people may have been at a similar level of biological awareness. Jacquita Hawkes wrote in 1963 that Australian and a few other primitive peoples did not understand biological paternity or accept a necessary connection between sexual intercourse and conception. In that same year, S.G.F. Brandon, professor of comparative religion at the University of Manchester in England, observed, how the infant came to be in the womb was undoubtedly a mystery to primitive man. In view of the period that separates impregnation from birth, it seems probable that the significance of gestation and birth was appreciated long before it was realized that these phenomena were the result of conception following coition. James Fraser, Margaret Mead, and other anthropologists, writes, Leonard Cottrell have established that in the very early stages of man's development, before the secret of human fecundity was understood, before coitus was associated with childbirth, the female was revered as the giver of life. Only women could produce their own kind, and man's part in this process was not as yet recognized. According to these authors, as well as many authorities who have written on this subject, in the most ancient human societies, people probably did not yet possess the conscious understanding of the relationship of sex to reproduction. Thus, the concepts of paternity and fatherhood would not yet have been understood, though probably accompanied by various mythical explanations. Babies were simply born from women. If this was the case, then the mother would have been seen as the singular parent of her family, the lone producer of the next generation. For this reason, it would be natural for children to take the name of their mother's tribe or clan. Accounts of descent in the family would be kept through the female line, going from mother to daughter rather than father to son, as is the custom practiced in Western societies today. Such a social structure is generally referred to as matrilineal, that is, based upon mother kinship. In such cultures, known among many primitive peoples even today, as well as in historically attested societies at the time of classical Greece, not only the names, but titles, possessions, and territorial rights are passed along through the female line, so that they may be retained within the family clan. Hawkes points out that in Australia, in areas where the concept of paternity had not yet been understood, there is much to show that matrilineal descent and matrilocal marriage, the husband moving to the wife's family's home or village, were general and the status of women much higher. She writes that these customs still prevail in parts of Africa among the Dravidians of India, and relics of them in Melanesia, Micronesia, and Indonesia. The second line of evidence concerns the beginnings of religious beliefs and rituals and their connection with matrilineal descent. There have been numerous studies of Paleolithic cultures, explorations of sites occupied by these people, and the apparent rites connected with the disposal of their dead. These suggest that, as the earliest concepts of religion developed, they probably took the form of ancestor worship. Again, an analogy is drawn between the Paleolithic people and the religious concepts and rituals observed among many of the primitive tribes, studied by anthropologists over the last 2 centuries. Ancestor worship occurs among tribal people the world over. Maringer states that even at the time of his writing, 1956, certain tribes in Asia were still making small statues known as dzuli. Explaining these, he says, the idols are female and represent human origins of the whole tribe. Thus, as the religious concepts of the earliest Homo sapiens were developing, the quest for the ultimate source of life, perhaps the core of all theological thought, may have begun. In these Upper Paleolithic societies, in which the mother may have been regarded as the sole parent of the family, ancestor worship was apparently the basis of sacred ritual, and accounts of ancestry were probably reckoned only through the matriline. The concept of the creator of all human life may have been formulated by the clan's image of the woman who had been the most ancient, the primal ancestor, and that image thereby deified and revered as divine ancestress.